Welcome. Ed and Lake was released in 2008 and was directed by James Watkins. It stars Kelly Reilly and Michael Fassbender and is about a couple who are terrorized by a bunch of teenagers. So right off the bat, I'm just going to give like a little content warning with this movie. It's just very triggering, I guess would be the word. It's not exploitive. And you're going to see a podcast where my friends and I talk about it. So be on the lookout for that. But this is going to be no spoilers, no anything. But I do want to give a little content warning with this movie, because there are some things that could be triggering to some people. So there's your little content warning. Yeah, let's just start talking about this movie. So Ed and Lake. I heard a lot about this movie. I heard that some people thought it was exploitive, although I personally do not think so. And I heard that it has a very, very infamous ending, which now after watching the movie, I could say, oh my god, I could see why, because it is a very, very good movie, and it will 100% affect you after watching it, after the completion of watching it. Now, I've seen some people give this movie bad reviews because they don't like the ending, and I don't want to spoil why they don't, but I will say that's how the movie ends, and although it's not what you imagined, it's a very good ending, so I don't see why people don't like it. I mean, I can understand why people don't like it, but yeah, I just don't get why people are giving it lower reviews, because they personally didn't appreciate the ending. So let's just start talking about this movie. In terms of pros, the acting is absolutely fantastic. Kelly Reilly is amazing. So freaking amazing as Jenny. And Michael Fassbender is great as Steve. I mean, I love Michael Fassbender. I think he's a great actor. He's fantastic in this. And even the kids, they do such a great job. I mean, these children actors are so good and pull off this very disturbing performance that is just amazing. In terms of other pros, I mean, the social critique that this movie portrays, there's a lot of stuff with Broken Britain, which that one's a little bit more political in nature, and they portray the hoodie era of horror, which is, you know, teenagers and hoodies and them being terrible. But the social construct of this group of teenagers that are portrayed, and seeing how they interact with each other and how they all have their different personalities that kind of show up and create that group dynamic, was just done so well. I mean, it goes back to how great these actors were. They do such a great job. And my last pro with this movie is definitely the blood and gore effects. They are done so well. And, you know, you look at movies like Saw, for example, it just has blood and gore up the wazoo, but this movie has very effective, disturbing blood and gore moments that really just make you want to turn away and not watch. And by not watch, I mean not watch in a good way. In terms of cons, though, I mean, I do have a big con, which is the suspension of disbelief. They ask you to overlook a lot of different things in this movie, and there's a lot of decisions that characters make that, although you can understand why they made the decision, you personally think, I would have never made that decision in my life. I would have dipped. I would have not been, you know, like different things like that. It makes sense for certain characters why they do the things that they do. But when we look at it as an audience member and try to put ourselves into that character's shoes, we don't always agree with the decisions that they make and think that there are better decisions to be made. So I do want to say that is a con with this movie, because there's like one or two things that happen as like, okay, no normal human being would ever make that decision, but I understand why the character in the movie would do that. And I guess another con you could say is, why are the teenagers the way that they are? And by that I mean, why are they doing the things that they're doing? Now, they do a good job of explaining specific things, but sometimes you're like, that would a teenager do that? And I gotta say, that's a con. I do want to say, though, that although those are my cons that I have with it, I was able to overlook them because the movie is good enough so that you can. So, there's that. Now, I didn't mention it at the beginning, but I do have the boys from the podcast in this review to say their thoughts on the movie. So, you know what? Let's just throw it over to Nick first. Nick.
Eden Lake definitely shocked me. And I hadn't been shocked by a horror movie in a while. I think it's because going into it, you think you know halfway through how it's going to end. You think it's going to be the stereotypical camp film with kids. And then it's not that much at all, and it just takes those elements of being abandoned being up by yourself at the beach, but then being hunted by kids, and then it just kind of flips the script about it, and I think it provides a really, really good commentary on the dynamics between kids and parents, even if you're familiar with the Broken Britain history or not. However, there's a lot of points for me that just it falls through the cracks because of logistical issues, of choices that characters should have made following that logic, and it brought me out of it a little bit because it wasn't believable at times that that's what they would have chosen to do. Overall, it was a really good movie. I enjoyed it. Really thrilling, but not by no means amazing. I think I'd give it a 7.9. I think that's what I gave it on the podcast. But yeah, I personally would recommend it, and it's definitely worth checking out.
Thank you, Nick, for your little review of this movie. But now let's throw it over to Bill.
Hey everyone, it's your favorite podcaster, Bill, on behalf of Flash Forward Reviews and the Two Strangers podcast. I was asked by Ryan to give a little review of Eden Lake, sort of for the main channel. We kind of talked about it on the podcast a bit, but I think a lot of people have this perception that Eden Lake is an exploitation film. And the thing is that as we talked about on the podcast, I don't really believe that definition is 100% accurate. I think it's a film that relies on some of the social conventions of the things that were going on in Britain at the time, in the perceived social degradation of the political climate at that time. The thing is that you can definitely disagree with me, but I personally feel wow, these kids and what they're doing to this couple that literally did virtually nothing to them is pretty twisted. I can't even imagine I mean, I guess we all have the experimental weird kind of part of our youth where we're rebel against the machine. But the thing is that the simple fact in my mind remains that these kids are a product not only of their parents and their upbringing, but also their effect on one another. And I'm sure Nick, our resident psychology major, could do a better job about describing those dynamic relationships than I could. But the big thing I want to say is that I think Eden Lake is a worthy film of your time because of the way it makes you feel. And the reason that I say that is I think any film that features children as the main antagonist, there's tons of examples. The one that comes to my mind right away is Children of the Corn, Children of the Damned as well. The fact that they are children is what puts you sort of it puts you in an easy spot. But the thing is that together they're able to more than overwhelm the two main characters of the film, and that is what makes them sort of effective at conveying this idea of horror as something that could happen just to anyone. They just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time, and they were just trying to have a nice respite. And of course, we talked about it a bit in the podcast how of course it's always a lake and it's always summer and it's always a thing. But I think that beyond that, Eden Lake serves as a great model of filmmaking that is influenced by what's around it. And while I don't think like, the filmmakers necessarily were trying to like make like a political statement, I think that they're just trying to make like, a film that appealed to them, which I think is a thing of all filmmaking. You should make it for yourself first. We'll talk about that on the podcast at some other time. But I think that this works as a film that is both effective and scary for reasons that aren't always immediately surface level. It kind of plays with your perception of what is supposed to happen to the kids and everything. I really thought that it was going to be something at the end where all the kids are like brought to justice. But the thing is that the violence is actually perpetuated. And that's actually horrifying in of itself. And like, there's all these connections to like various like things where it's like the various like works of media where like, no, it's like, the reason the violence happened in the first place is because it's a continuing cycle of violence, which is a very important concept in lots of things in literature. I know I specifically talked on the podcast about Lesson Zero, which, I'd love to see made into a good movie. Not the watered down version thing, but and maybe I'll make it someday. But okay, this has been Bill. Yeah, I definitely recommend Eden Lake. Go see it. Bye.
And thank you, Bill, for saying your thoughts about the movie. And please, everyone, check out the Three Strangers podcast. It is a great podcast. I think this review will be going up before the actual podcast goes up, so check it out. But if it doesn't and the podcast is already up, then check it out, because it definitely is a great podcast and we were all very proud of it. But overall, I'd give this movie an 8 out of 10, and I do recommend it. It is fantastic. You're not going to regret watching it. Oh, you might regret a little bit watching it just because of the content matter of this film, but it's a great watch. If you're a horror fan, you'll really love it. So thank you everyone for watching this review, and be on the lookout for the next 2 Chucky reviews that I have planned, Child's Play 3 and Bride of Chucky. So like I said, be on the lookout for that, but let's flash forward to the next reveal.